Hello, hello, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm your host, Nick Brlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat, and thankfully, Horwat, the All-Star weekend has come to a close, and Penguins-specific hockey is on the horizon, of course, with their game on Tuesday against the Colorado Avalanche. We will talk about that a little bit later in the show. We will talk about Ron Hextall's press conference, which had everybody a little bit worried on Sunday afternoon. We're going to talk about the practice that was on Sunday, some of the line changes that we got, but we have to mention the All-Star game right off the bat. Horwat, I think saying it didn't go well would be the nicest possible way of me putting this, right?
No, it would be. It would be. And I think a lot of that is centered around the skills competition part of it because,
Yeah.
did anyone watch the actual All-Star game? Didn't. I had to. Honestly, thankfully, the Metropolitan Division had a couple cool moments with Crosby and Ovechkin, and then bowed out. Thankfully, I didn't have to continue watching for another couple of hours. It felt. And honestly, the whole All-Star game was, that's fine. It was as fine as it was going to be. It was cool. Like I said, we got the cool moments from the Chuck brothers, Crosby and Ovechkin, a couple of hat tricks here and there. What did you expect? It looked like Sorokin, by the way, was going hard. That was kind of fun. It's cool seeing a goalie actually care about it.
Jari did what was that in 2020 in St. Louis?
Yeah. I don't remember it though. But then there was the skills competition, and that is, like we said before, usually the more entertaining portion of the 2 days across all sports. Somehow this one wasn't. Somehow, even the cool events that you're there for, usually the hardest shot, the fastest skater, accuracy shooting, duds. Duds. Thankfully, leave it up to Sarah Nurse's goal, and then Crosby and Ovechkin and Sergei Ovechkin stealing the show. That's all they had to do, and thankfully they did that.
I'll throw McDavid in there as well for the 4-for-4 performance on the accuracy shooting, but at the same time, that was in the first round. Why are we doing rounds? I understand it, but like I agree with you. The skills competition was not good. The pacing was horrendous, and that's the worst part. This is something that how did you not expect people to be disinterested in a commercial packed, poorly paced performance where you're not even finishing these competitions at once. You're saying, hey, stick around because we're going to finish this off in about 3 hours. Nobody wanted to sit through all of that. And yes, Sarah Nurse stole the show, in my opinion. The Crosby and Ovi thing, it was nice. It was a nice moment. I'm sure Alex and his wife are so happy they have that moment, and it was cool. But when you hear Sid and Ovi are going to be, doing something together, you kind of wish for a little bit more. And that's how I felt about the entire weekend. You have some of the most talented individuals on this planet all on the same sheet of ice, and you really don't take advantage of it. I get nobody wants to get hurt. I understand that. It's the middle of the season. A lot of these guys are trying to compete for the postseason. A lot of these guys are trying to compete for a Stanley Cup in a couple months, but there's ways to do it where you're not endangering them from injury, but also providing some entertainment. And it's something that the NHL struggles with constantly, so I'm not going to harp on it. You mentioned, I don't know how many people watched the actual All-Star game, the 3v3 tournament. I didn't. I watched it on YouTube the next morning in like 10 minutes. Saw what I needed to see and said, all right, that's cool. Picked the pictures from it. I'm a big sports photography, enjoying sports photography guy. I love the picture of Sid and Ovi. If you're on our Twitter page, that was the cover photo for this episode. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's the All-Star game. It's never going to be fixed because I don't trust the NHL to fix it. And next year, it's in Toronto, so even less stars are going to want to actually show up whenever it's early February in the 6.
I also don't understand what the league is trying to do with the All-Star game anymore and putting it in a city like Toronto. Are you attempting to grow the game still? Because, putting it in Florida makes sense to try and grow the game. Nashville, they're there, but trying to grow the game and less popular hockey markets. You're not growing a thing in Toronto.
No.
That is the hockey mecca, if you will. I don't know. I don't understand what they're doing with city selection. And with the Crosby and everything, yeah, I totally expected more, but thankfully it was still something positive.
It was cute.
Um, I felt like I had another note that I'm forgetting that. Oh, and the splash contest again needs no discussion. Um, Good on Sid for being peak Sidney Crosby though, and looking for a redo and some sort of call out of him and McKinnon not winning. That's hilarious. That is him. Um, but overall, I mean, yeah, I didn't care for it. It had its moments, but uh, uh,
Yeah,
what,
that's a pretty good summation of the entire weekend. It was, yeah, no, well, yeah, it was there. It happened. It happened.
I'm
It's
sure
over.
I'm sure the players had a little bit of fun
I'm
here
sure
and
they had fun,
there.
but none of that was on camera.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I thought I had another note, but it's escaping me. And clearly it didn't matter that much. It was the All-Star weekend.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
it was also in
exactly.
Florida. And they did that pan at the beginning of the skills competition. I don't know if I just missed it, but whenever I started noticing, I went, oh, there's nobody there. Like there's
No.
not a crowd and there's nobody in the seats.
Mm-mm.
That's good. That's real good. Are you happy, Gary? Are you happy?
Gary is what Gary is, and I don't know what Gary's happy about at this moment in time. There's a lot of things in the NHL that need fixed. The All-Star game is low on that list, but certainly on the list,
Yeah.
to say the least. But let's get back to some Penguins hockey. Nice little bow placed on the All-Star weekend. We won't talk about it till next February, but Ron Hextall kind of lit the internet on fire when, of course, everybody announced that he was going to be speaking to the media yesterday around 3:30, half hour before a very late practice for the Pittsburgh Penguins on Sunday. He spoke for about 10 minutes on Sunday, addressing the current state of the team, taking questions about his thoughts, his plans. The freak out was hilarious
Mhm.
to me, because I think what you need to understand is you're going to get 4 guaranteed press conferences from any NHL general manager, even a guy like Ron Hextall, who prefers to not actually talk to the media. And we haven't heard from him since training camp. That's one of the days. You're going to hear from him at least once in training camp. You're going to hear from him on free agency day after all the moves have been made. You're going to hear from him on trade deadline day after the deadline, after any moves if they make them. And you're going to hear them after the season. Their thoughts, what they're thinking going into the offseason. Those are the 4 guaranteed times. This is the next most likely spot you're going to hear a general manager speak, because this is the true reset for NHL teams. The Christmas break, nobody really talks because everybody's enjoying time with their family. This is the break that, hey, everybody had about 10 days off. You had your bye week as well. Now you're coming out of it. You got a month to go until the trade deadline. The GM has to speak on a few things. That's when it comes out. But there were some things in here that caught my attention. Most of it was GM speak. Most of it
Mhm.
was, the standard is the standard kind of crap that you get from Mike Tomlin. It was taken right out of the NHL media guide, basically, for Ron Hextall. But a few things caught my attention, and we'll get to some things that caught your attention as well, Horwat, as you were in the building. The one that I think most people reacted to was his answer regarding his plans with the first round pick. I think there was a little bit of misinformation by omission on his answer about the first round pick. We have the answer here. We'll play it for you in a second, courtesy of the Pittsburgh Penguins website. But I do believe you really need to listen to the fact that he says, because trading the first round pick because of clearing cap space alone, not in general, but because of cap space. Here's Ron Hextall, and here's what he had to say on that.
A first round pick?
Yeah, first round pick or equivalent.
Yeah, I would say that's not on the table. I haven't been asked for that, certainly. Conversations, I think, are starting to pick up with a lot of guys, but there's not a lot of guys people are kind of looking to see what's out there, kind of grabbing the group. Okay, we'd be interested in this or this on both sides, whether you're a buyer or a seller, but there's not a lot of teams. Obviously, we saw the big one the other day with the Islanders, but there's not a lot of teams right now that are looking to jump and kind of getting down to the fine strokes here. But certainly the talk is picking up. But in terms of first round picks for getting salary out, I don't see that as being an option for us.
When you hear that answer, obviously he's discussing trading a first round pick to help offload maybe a Kasperi Kapanen, maybe a Jeff Carter, maybe a Brian Dumoulin. He's saying he's not willing to throw away a first round pick in order to just get rid of some of these guys. And to that point, I agree.
Yeah, it was an awkward little back and forth between the person asking the question and the answer, because obviously the question was, are you looking to, it was I'm pretty sure he was trying to boil it down to, are you looking to trade a first round pick? And I think that's what he was trying to get out of it, but also decided to throw in the, would you do it to relieve cap space? Because I forget if it was earlier in the presser or after. You're going to talk about it eventually anyway, where Hextall mentions whenever he came in, he wanted to always have the $2 million gap that he could work with, kind of. And I whenever he said that, I remembered, oh yeah, he wanted that, and then never got it because COVID reasons, cap reasons, hockey reasons. So if that was part of it, maybe obviously Hextall doesn't want to move out the first round pick for cap reasons, which makes sense, I guess. Yeah, if you're going to move out your first round pick, you want a legitimate return. Not that cap relief isn't a legitimate return, but you want something substantial. You want something you can put on the ice right now, because your first round pick is someone who's not going to be on the ice right now, sure, depending on the player. But it is at least a useful piece and a useful cog to have down the line, i.e. Owen Pickering from last season. I think last year we were perfectly fine with not getting rid of the first round pick, and then we ended up getting a good piece out of it. But this year we see where the team is, and it wouldn't be a panic move to move out the first round pick, but it is definitely something that should be on the table. And I think my thought of it is, because the question was worded awkwardly and then the answer was kind of worded awkwardly. Not the whole question and answer should be ignored, but it should almost be thrown out the window, because people want to know if you're trading the first round pick. That's all they want to know. They're not worried about cap situations. They're not worried about consistency issues. They want to know if you're trading the first round pick, and we really didn't learn that. That was kind of my thought process on it.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. What he answered was, would you move the first round pick just to get salary cap space, which means would you use it to help aid the departure of a guy that has a big salary cap, even Brock McGinn, Kasperi Kapanen, and guys like that get thrown into the mix there. And he said no. And again, like, I understand where he's coming from. Like, that is a valuable asset. If you're going to use it, you got to use it to bring somebody in. I mean, we saw the Islanders, as he mentioned at one point in his press conference, use it to bring in Bo Horwat along with an NHL player and a mid to top level prospect. So yes, I agree with him there, but I thought there was a little misinformation of people thinking that he's just taking it off the table entirely, which we understand. He doesn't like trading first round picks. Right. He hasn't traded one since he became the Penguins general manager. It's a far cry from Jim Rutherford. We've said it so many times, but he's not saying here that he's not willing to trade it at all and it's off the table, which I talked about it on Penguins to Go a couple weeks ago. It 100% should be on the table, because if you can get the opportunity to really significantly help this team for that first round pick, you take it right now. 10 times out of 10, that's the deal. But I wouldn't trade it just simply to get rid of cap space, because then you're one major asset down trying to acquire another bigger asset, and it just makes it much more difficult for him. But we don't need to keep harping on that. The other thing that I noticed is that he tried to stay as cordial as possible when discussing the Pittsburgh Penguins' bottom six. If you substitute, and I know that, listen, this is putting words in his mouth. I don't want to do that. But in my mind, I substituted the word chemistry for performance in this next clip. Might not be what he was thinking, but it's how I was taking it. Listen to this and keep that in mind.
The chemistry there hasn't been kind of like we had hoped it would be. There's times, I think, where we've had some chemistry down there, but I think over the course of the year, the chemistry hasn't been that great. And chemistry is a tough thing to define when you're talking about a line or a hockey team or a defense or a forward group. But you can kind of feel it and see it when it's there. And I think that's somewhere where we can look to hopefully improve.
You understand that he's not going to slander his team.
No. Mike Sullivan said that before this year, too, that he's not going to get behind a microphone and say anything bad about their team. Unless it's necessary and there are obvious things for it. In this case, you could say there are. But it's not clear, obviously. It's not one of those things that they're just going to come out and say it. Yeah, both both Hextall and Sullivan are not going to slander their team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And we look at that answer, and I substituted the word chemistry for performance, and it tells me exactly how he feels about the bottom six, that they haven't gotten what they wanted from it. They haven't performed to the level that Hextall was hoping they would when he put them all together back in August, back in July, when he put them on paper. And that's something else he said. He likes the team on paper, but sometimes when you look at it on the ice, I don't like what I see. And it's understandable. But I thought he was trying to stay as cordial as possible. But to me, there's clearly something nagging at him that's nagging at the rest of everybody else. And that's the bottom six isn't good enough. And I think that that's something that people say, hey, his inaction speaks louder than words. But his words there tell you that, hey, he sees it too. He's not abrupt of the situation. He's aware that the bottom six needs adjusted.
Yeah, everyone's aware of this. Everyone's aware that the bottom six kind of needs a push. One thing that one of my takeaways is, and I will just kind of jump into it now, is that he, in the first clip he showed, he mentioned that talks have been starting to pick up, and that's good. I don't know what that means, but that just means talks are starting to pick up in some capacity. But he also said that, he doesn't want to just make the knee-jerk decision. He doesn't want to make the move to throw somebody out of the window quickly and bring in someone else now. He wants there to be some sort of, he mentions chemistry a lot there. He wants there to be some sort of fit with whatever he brings back. He wants to make sure that the player is going to fit. So he's being cautious as hell about this. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of it. And when you look at the team on paper, he's totally right. It is a good team on paper. Absolutely. There are like Dan Heinen before this season, and before even coming to Pittsburgh, had a fairly decent career in the NHL. He had a good bottom six numbers for what it's worth. Kasperi Kapanen is a name. He's, a legacy player. His father played in the NHL, and we know he has speed and skill. He can do something in this league. It just hasn't been put together this year. Brian Dumoulin. We know Brian Dumoulin at one point could have been considered a top 10 defenseman in franchise history. And now we see where he's at. On paper, this team is solid. It's just that something about that bottom six is not putting it together. And it's a matter of them putting it together, I think. Mm-hmm. It's if a move doesn't get made, even though a move should, if a move doesn't get made, it's just about people waking up.
Yeah. You really need that, because at the end of the day, you're not going to get 6 new names down there. Yeah. That's physically impossible to get 6 new names down there in the next 28 days. It's impossible. So a lot of these guys are going to be out there, which is another reason that he's not going to slander these guys. Like, he's not going to go out there and be like, well, Brock McGinn scoring goals, but not putting it all together, man. That's all I'm going to say. He's not going to do that. Yeah. As much as sometimes you'd like him to be like, yeah, boy, did I mess up by signing Kasperi Kapanen to the same number when I probably should have signed him for 2. That's what you want him to say. It'd be nice to hear that admittance of guilt, but that's not going to happen. Nobody does that. Doesn't matter if you're an NHL general manager or if you're a cashier at a quick fill. Like, you're not going to say, yeah, I was wrong. Sorry, my bad. Ooh, yeah. That was a misstep. So I do really think that when you look at what Hextall has been saying, a lot of the stuff was GM speak. We broke down a couple things there. We're going to end with this, because this was genuinely the only thing that kind of got under my skin that he answered. And you'll hear why. I just feel like when he answered his thoughts on the salary cap, you mentioned it earlier. I told myself, I made a deal with myself to have $2 million for call-ups and this and that. We understand that, which is why Penguins have been playing leave a penny, take a penny with the LTIR situation, just so they can have enough players to ice a team. But here was his reaction about the question on cap space and where he's at right now with it.
Well, I had an unwritten rule a few years ago to keep $2 million in cap space, just to allow call-ups and possible deadline. With the flat cap, quite frankly, it's become much more difficult. Do you want to go into the season with a team that you think is a little lesser, and go those first 2 or 3 months with, maybe one lesser player or a player that's not as good as that one player, and all of a sudden, it's a tough question to answer. But I think last summer we wanted to sign Gino, we wanted to sign Tanger, and we knew it was going to cost us, so we obviously stretched them out as we've talked about. But if you're asking me if I'd rather have one less of our top players and have a couple $1 million, I would say the answer is no.
Evgeny Malkin is the team's second line center. Chris Letang is the team's number one defenseman. Why were those the names that came out of your mouth, Ron? Like, when you're talking about the salary cap, I get it. It was the big names of the offseason. It was the number one thing on your to-do list. It was told to you to be the number one thing on your to-do list. But why are you bringing them up when it comes to, yeah, I would have liked to have the $2 million in cap space, but, we know we wanted to sign Gino. We know we wanted to sign Letang. They both took pay cuts to stay in Pittsburgh. If you look at Dom Luszczyszyn's player cards, him and Shayna Goldman, they're very much playing under what they should be being paid. That, to me, was the biggest misstep by Hextall. It was late in the press conference, so he might have been like, I'm running out of colloquialisms right now. But I was like, why would you bring that up when there are contracts on your resume, like Kapanen, Ruda, McGinn, Carter, Bluger? There's plenty of names to say. You said the two guys that, yes, Letang was bad to start the season. Of course, everything that happened in the middle of the season, he's still your number one defenseman. You wouldn't have gotten a guy that would be in that role for that money. Same thing goes with Malkin. Why on earth are those the two names that you wanted to bring up in that situation when you didn't have to bring them up at all?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean,
I think,
that bothered me a little bit. Like, not enough that I'm gonna sit there and be like, you know what, that pissed me off, but it
Right.
bothered me, and I was like, why bring it up? Why do that, Hextall? You're so measured in everything you've said. That, to me, was the only misstep that he had, and I was like, that's a stupid misstep to make.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have even. I'm really not even able to come up with a rebuttal for it. It's just part of his gig, I guess. It was one of the bigger storylines heading into all of last off season. We know that, but he got them back for a good number, and yeah, I don't know. I'd have to. That's something that would have to be followed up on, I guess, and looked into a little deeper. But
Yeah.
that's a tough one. It is those his cap situation, his unwritten rule of $2 million. Obviously got screwed over by a couple of different things, but at this point, we don't think either that Malkin and Letang's salaries are part of that $2 million gap. I mean,
No.
it could be it was 2 years, but it could just be how bad the Jeff Carter contract looks right now. How unwell the Kasperi Kapanen contract looks at the moment. If you really wanted to, how about if you want to keep referencing those player cards, how many players are playing under their value?
7 last time I checked.
Who was the one that was league min? Teddy Bluger?
Brian Dumoulin
was
I believe Teddy Bluger was league min too.
Yeah,
there were several players that were league min that were getting paid over $1 million.
Yeah, those are the tough ones. So, yeah, I mean, Teddy Bluger being at league min hurts the most, I think, because of what we know he was and could have been. But oh well.
That's the thing. And we'll close this discussion. We'll move on. We'll talk about injury updates in the second segment. We'll talk about line shifting in the second segment. It's going to be a fun discussion. Stick around for that. But to close this one out, the reason that I was like, why are you talking, is because there's so many different places. You just mentioned it. There's so many different places that you could go with that conversation. Hey, where could we have found that $2 million buffer? Where could we have gotten that? Well, I mean, one of the main places, I like Jan Ruda. I think he brings an edge that the Pittsburgh Penguins kind of need on the back end. And I understand why they went after him as a player. But for $2.75 million of Jan Ruda, are you really getting that much of an upgrade over an $800,000 Chad Ruhwedel?
This season, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes this season because Chad Ruhwedel's not been the same player this year.
He's been put in different situations.
Yeah, in most other seasons, though, yeah, absolutely. He's not that much of an improvement. But this season, I'd say Jan Ruda has vastly outplayed. This is just my opinion. Like I said, this is kind of what I've seen and what I thought the vibe was with the team. That you are definitely getting more out of Jan Ruda than you are Chad Ruhwedel this year, who also worked his way into a new contract this past offseason, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big old part of it.
Yeah, but is he $2 million better? Like, are you getting that much more consistency and better play out of Jan Ruda? I would say no. Then if you had the Ruhwedel you had last year, which if he would have started the entire season, I think that's what you would be getting, and not,
Right.
we always praise Ruhwedel for being able to come in and step in any situation and play as if he's been playing the entire time. How are we going to dog him for not being able to do that to the level he's been normally doing it at? So I get where you're coming from, but I just feel like there's so many places that he could have said, and to say the two guys that really took like less money to stay in Pittsburgh, Malkin's over a point per game. Letang has been better since coming back from this latest injury, and is, of course, your best defenseman. When he's clicking on all cylinders, getting paid less than he should be. Like, I looked at that and I was like, Ron, what? Like, I get you don't like talking to the media, and this might be why, because we're literally nitpicking everything he said for the past 20 minutes. But like, you're the general manager of a team. That's why bring it up. But we should move on, because I'm saying it's not bothering me, and I keep talking about it, and I'm like, ugh, the distaste that I have for that answer is unbelievable. But
Listen,
last thoughts from you.
Yeah, the press conference as a whole did not provide
Anything.
too many things that were solid. We got, that he thinks the bottom six needs improved. We all think that. If I go through my recordings, I'm sure we could find something of Sullivan saying that on a couple of different occasions. I would say, however, my biggest takeaway is the fact that he agrees with us all, and that he said it was the very first question. This team hasn't been consistent this year. You could tie it back to the goalies as well.
Mm-hmm.
This team needs to pick up its consistency level and find ways to win. Like he said, this team is good on paper. It is. Like I said, you look at the names and you go, that is a playoff team. Jeff Carter has a possibility of making the Hall of Fame one day. Sorry to say that after this season, but he does. That guy's your third line center. Most years you're going to go, that's a hell of a third line center. On the wing with Kasperi Kapanen and Brock McGinn, speed guy and a Brock McGinn type. Teddy Bluger's got that great defensive standout ability on offense. Ryan Poehling has shown himself to really be something this year, even though looking at it on paper, he might be the most who's that guy kind of name.
Yeah.
Whenever we play teams and someone scores against us and we go, who's that guy? The Penguins don't really have a lot of that this year. They don't. And maybe that's just because we watch this team over and over again. But all 20-some players on this team, you go, those are names. Those are names. So on paper, this team has the ability to be something. It is about now getting it to click. That hasn't been happening. So it's a matter of now making the proper adjustments, especially if no one's going to start clicking. So I do agree with Hextall when he says, when I look at this team on paper, I like it. I do too. When I look at this team on paper, I do too. There's names there that can all do something and have done something in this league before. Now it's got to click. Now they got to wake up. So am I still calling for a trade? Yes, please, for the love of God. But maybe it just takes a minute. Maybe things click. I don't know. It needs to happen, though. It needs to happen. It needs to happen soon. And something's got to wake up.
Yeah, good old Ronnie Hextall needs to get on that BlackBerry from NHL 13 and make a move, Ronnie, make a move. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll catch you up on everything that happened at Penguins practice, injury updates, switching lines, and everything else. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. The Penguins as a team took the ice yesterday for the first time in a little over a week at practice at 4 p.m. Up in Cranberry. Gave you some time, Horwat. They said, you know what, take your time getting over here from the south side. South Hills, not south side, but
over
regardless.
2 in Robinson.
That's South Hills.
It's more west, but whatever.
I digress on the point. But the big news, obviously, everybody wants to know the injury updates out of break. Josh Archibald and Kasperi Kapanen practiced in full contact, according to head coach Mike Sullivan. Both will be game-time decisions. Tomorrow against the Colorado Avalanche, you can expect them to probably, considering they were both in line rushes, most likely make their return to the Pittsburgh Penguins lineup tomorrow evening against the defending Stanley Cup champions. We'll talk about them in a bit. Jan Ruda skated before practice with Ty Hennes. He is eligible to return February 14th, Valentine's Day on Tuesday of next week against the San Jose Sharks. We'll see if he ends up being available, meaning if he travels with the team. I would expect if he's practicing with Ty Hennes that he will be traveling with the team when they go out to Western California. And Tristan Jarry, of course, the big one, skated with Ty Hennes before practice as well and is still considered day to day. So that's positive news compared to what people are expecting from Tristan Jarry. But positive news on the Tristan Jarry front is that it seems like his return should be sometime here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it really should be. You'd hope so. Day to day, I mean, we thought he would come back right away because that's kind of what the announcement led us to believe, right? Hey, we're going to put him on the shelf until following the All-Star break. Hey, the All-Star break's over, and, well, he's still not back, but he's skating with Hennes and Kyoto. The day-to-day label helps. It's just a matter of now getting back with the team and doing this all over again. Does he travel out west? Man, I hope so, because out west has not been kind to the Penguins over these past few seasons. We could use every bit of help we can get.
Yeah, the Penguins certainly are a much better team with Tristan Jarry between the pipes. And even for Casey DeSmith's sanity, he's better when he's only backing up Tristan Jarry. I mean, not actually saying when he's sitting on the bench and opening the door for the defense. I'm talking about when he just comes in 1 out of every 5 games instead of starting 4 of the 5 and having Dustin Tokarski to back him up. So I thought it was good news all around. The day-to-day tag, we've seen it this year. It's kind of bit the Penguins in the butt. Petrie was the most notable one where he was day-to-day. Then he was on the LTIR because it got worse. But I think when we're at this stage where he's already missed 16 days, 15 days, and you're still at day-to-day, you're in a good situation with Tristan Jarry. But the other thing to note, and I'll bring it up here for those that are watching us on YouTube and Inside the Penguins, the line rushes were a little different on Sunday. They switched things up upon return from the All-Star break. The first thing, of course, that you notice is the top 6 is rearranged again to the better version, in my opinion. I'll let you give yours, but Raquel up with Crosby and Gensel. Rust goes down to Malkin and Zucker.
My opinion of the top 6 is, yes, this is the better version, but it honestly doesn't make that much of a difference, I think, anymore. I think the time for all the crying over it is over just because it makes no difference. Raquel's going to bring the productivity no matter where he is, and it's just a matter of Brian Rust picking up his end no matter where he is. We know Crosby's going to produce. We know Malkin this season specifically is really going to produce. As much as Zucker produces, I feel like he also goes on quiet stretches that we don't realize. I think he's in one right now, if I was able to pull the numbers up quickly. And Gensel's having a down year in our eyes, but it's still somehow
a down year, on pace for 35 goals still. But like that's exactly.
But I think we expected more from him. Yeah, like Zucker hasn't gotten a point in 4 games. You know, he goes through weird quiet stretches that nobody notices because he's also just throwing the body around and still getting all of the shots and creating opportunities. So somehow the weak link here is Brian Rust, but it's a matter of him picking it up. And I think he can do that from wherever he is. If you really want to bolster this bottom 6, he's the one to move down there. But that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, the question for that then becomes who in God's green earth is moving into that top 6 alongside of Genny Malkin. Kapanen is probably the first name that comes to mind for both of us, but
it's whoever you trade for at the deadline. That's who it is.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. Whoever you trade for at the deadline, whoever's hammering above me, I swear I might strangle them out. I'm not hearing it on that side. But honestly, you know, I do think that it's the better of the 2 configurations, but clearly your top 6 has been very productive regardless. So, yeah, not much to take on that. I think Raquel with Crosby and Gensel is obviously the better line, and Russ with Malkin and Zucker, statistically, moneypuck.com, expected goals. Some people don't like that stat. I think it's a very good stat when you look at how these guys are playing, and that line together produces a lot of opportunities and produces a lot of expected goals while not allowing as much. Second in the NHL. Over the entire season among teams or lines that have played over 150 minutes.
Stonks on the rise with this bottom top 6 configuration.
Mhm. And I also discussed that as it pertains to just Brian Rust as a whole,
Mhm.
and his season. I was fully ready on Penguins to go last week to bash Brian Rust, but I looked at his numbers and I'm like, man, the only thing that's really hurting him is his shooting percentage. If he was able to get that up, we would just be looking at it as another ho-hum Brian Rust season. So got to start lighting the lamp more, Rusty, and then we'll be all a-okay with you. But let's talk about the bottom 6 because clearly the biggest topic of conversation. Brock McGinn, Jeff Carter, Kasperi Kapanen reunited as the third line with Kapanen coming back from injury. What are your thoughts on this? Because I have many.
Did we expect anything less? I guess.
Not really.
Yeah,
Not really.
I don't know what else we could have expected. I mean, maybe a trade to have been made by now to help maybe bump Brian Rust in that position. Maybe have some other maneuvering. I don't know what else we expected. I really don't. Maybe Drew O'Connor to stay in somewhere, but I mean, to be fair, who are you taking out? To be completely honest, who is Mike Sullivan? Because he's the one constructing this lineup. Who is Mike Sullivan taking out of this lineup for Drew O'Connor?
That's an important little asterisk that you put there because I would have said, yep, Teddy Bluger.
Yeah.
For a couple games, Teddy Bluger.
Yeah, me too. But guess what? It's not us making the decision. It's who is Mike Sullivan taking out of this lineup for Drew O'Connor? You're right. Yeah, maybe Teddy Bluger. Maybe even Brock McGinn. I don't know. No one is safe from the doghouse. We've seen that before.
Mhm.
But now it seems everyone except for Kapanen and Heinen are safe from the doghouse. That being said, maybe Kapanen, getting a scratch, except he's coming back from injury. You have to see what you have in him. So there's your thing. You gotta give him his playing time because he's coming back. And then, man, if he sucks again, doghouse.
Well, here's the thing with Kapanen. I'm glad you brought him up. I'm at the point where with Kapanen, we've been up and down with this man for the past 2 years.
Yikes.
I'm at the point with Kasperi Kapanen. I want to see what he is because I'm not sure anymore. Like, it's gotten cloudy because his injury and the way that he was being used before his injury have made it kind of cloudy because he got that stretch of healthy scratches in November, December. He came back, he exploded with goal scoring. Then he kind of faded back, and then he started just playing productive hockey, getting a goal here and there. Winter Classic, scores a lone goal, getting some assists, playing a little bit better, getting his expected goals and his underlyings up. And you're saying, okay, but he's still only playing like 8 minutes a night, 9 minutes a night because the coaching staff didn't know what to do with him. They're like, I don't know if I can trust this. I don't know if this can work in 15 minutes of time, which is what you're hoping that a third liner plays between 13 and 15, in my opinion. And then he gets injured. So it's made it very cloudy as to what kind of player Kasperi Kapanen is on this team now. And I want to see what it is. So I want to see him get more time. But you look at the rest of his line, Carter moving back to center. Same thing that you mentioned with Drew O'Connor. Who else is a third line center on this team? Nobody. Like, Carter might not be, but Bluger there didn't work. Paling is not that guy. I just don't know who is. Like, maybe once Poulin returns to the organization, he might be able to bump out and get an opportunity there as well, but it's not an option right now. Like, that's not where they're at. On the roster right now, the guys at the NHL level, the guys that were on the practice facility ice yesterday, it's the only guy there. It's a bad situation to be in, but that's the only guy there. I want to see more from Kapanen, but this third line as a whole, just it's hard. It could be good, but history has told us this season that it won't be good.
Don't make me say on paper again, because like I said, Jeff Carter.
On paper.
That possibility is of his future Hall of Fame induction is still there. He can close that. Yeah, on paper. It looks
Both
great.
Me and you love the paper.
I take notes on paper all the time. Brock McGinn, we saw what he went on a little scoring stretch this year.
He did.
He's got a Game 7 overtime winner. His name is cemented in places. Kasperi Kapanen has got speed and skill. This third line can be something, but it's not anymore. We just always expect more from Kapanen. I mean, there was that stretch there where he had in 3 games, 720 of ice, 843, 721. He had 3 points in that time.
Yeah. I
mean,
like cloudy, perfect way to say it. My vision is cloudy when it comes to looking at Kasperi Kapanen.
yeah, he's been over 10 a game every game since then and only recorded 1 assist, so maybe that's what you are getting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, again, it's like watching Kasperi Kapanen's like watching the All-Star contest, right? Skills competition right now. What are we getting here? It's got the potential. We know it has the potential to be something cool and fun. It's just not showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, doesn't that analogy work perfectly?
Yeah, patting yourself on the back there. I love it. Yeah,
Oh, great.
that was perfect. A little callback to the first segment, which if you missed that, go back and check it out. We talked about the All-Star game, or at least the shell of what is an All-Star game now. But the last thing we could talk about, Poehling, Blueger, Archibald is the fourth line. We've seen it a lot this season. Archie getting back healthy. We saw Ron Hextall loves Josh Archibald in the bottom six. I'm excited to see Archibald back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Poehling has been better, in my opinion, as the season has gone along. And Blueger returning to the fourth line is a good thing. He was not able to handle third line minutes. It just didn't look good. There were times when he was on the third line as the center that the fourth line was getting more minutes. So you're looking at it as basically being deployed as a fourth line. I would like to see DOC get some more opportunity, but oh well. I mean, at the same time, they need reinforcements. DOC, I think, is part of that. But I'm not going to sit here and stand on a soapbox about O'Connor playing over Blueger, even though I think it should happen. I think it's not that much of an upgrade. I'm not saying, listen, you're crazy if you don't do it, but in the instance that they're at right now, that's where I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the forward lineup. The defense stayed the way it was. O'Connor and Friedman were rotating in as the last pairing of defense. Basically, the two healthy scratches, which you can expect tomorrow in case one of Archibald or Kapanen is not prepared to go, in which case DOC will draw back in. But those are the line changes. Again, most of it is actually reverting back to what we saw from the Pittsburgh Penguins forward lines a little while ago. Probably in December, we had these guys as the actual line grouping. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, they have a game tomorrow. We'll get more updates in the morning skate. But we're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to give our expectations of this team starting tomorrow against the Avalanche and going forward out into the California road trip. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. No Pens poll this week just because we had a lot to get to considering we were coming out of the All-Star break. We'll be back with that next Monday. Keep an eye out for that on Sunday, Super Sunday, of course. We're both excited for the Super Bowl. At least I know I am. I think it's going to be a great game. But this team, out of break, this is another chance for them to reset. You heard it probably too many times yesterday at UPMC Lemieux Complex from everybody saying, hey, this is a nice reset. You saw a lot of mentions of it. Sullivan apparently addressed the team before the practice with it. The question that I have is it going to be better than the last time you had a reset? Because the last reset in the NHL calendar is the Christmas break. They came out of that one 0-4-1 in their first 5 games back. You can't do that right now. You can't do that. And you're hoping that they come out of the gate hot against the defending Cup champs.
Yeah, that reset was the start of the downfall.
Yeah.
It was the start of the downfall. Coming out of that reset, you could even spread it literally up until now. Let me do that. Because since coming back from that break, since that New York Islanders game, they are 5-7-4.
Oof.
There you go. That's true. Yes. How about we use this one as the actual reset? Because here's the thing. We went into that break doing very well. We were a very good team going into that reset. We didn't need a reset at that point. I mean, if I can quickly pull those numbers up because I can't. We were flying into it pretty well. There was that long winning streak that had just ended before we got into there. We looked like a very good, substantial team heading into the Christmas break, and coming out of it was just tough. And that's what we are still in. It's a matter of turning that around. Yeah, 9-2-1. 9-2-1 heading into it. And actually, that goes back further because I just hit a random game. There was a bunch of wins before then. So, yeah, we were coming into the first reset, which we didn't need. Now,
Yeah.
truly needed the reset, needed the little vacation, needed the beach getaways, I think
Ski getaways for Gino.
I was just about to say, I just read Malkin went up north to ski. That's fun. And we just needed everyone to kind of return to Pittsburgh a little healthier, which we got with Kapanen and Archibald. We're going to get with Jari eventually, Jan Ruda eventually, and we'll have a healthy lineup again, and this team can roll on all cylinders. So yeah, this is the true reset.
It is the true reset, and they're going to get tested right outside of that reset. I mean, you got the Colorado Avalanche, but it goes beyond that. You mentioned earlier, Penn's struggle historically on the Cali road trip. I meant to look up some numbers on that. I'll do that and get it out on Twitter, how they've done basically since the Cup championships, but I don't remember them doing too well. The one that stands out is the one that right before the COVID shutdown where those three teams were bad teams, and the Pittsburgh Penguins went out there and got nothing. Literal nothing. Stamped by a loss to the San Jose Sharks. I believe it was 5-0. They didn't show up in that game at SAP Center at all. So they're going to have that road trip where you would expect 2 of the 3 games, Anaheim, San Jose, but they just played those teams. They had to go to a shootout or overtime against Anaheim, and we know what happened against San Jose the last game before break. So they're going to do that on the road coming up here next week. And then when they return, it's not like it gets any easier. 3 games in 4 days. Islanders, Devils, Islanders. You want a playoff spot? You're going to have to earn it. They have a lot of games left against Metropolitan Division teams, against teams that are going to be battling for playoff positioning. It's going to be, I think they said yesterday, 33 games in 66 days to end the season. It's a tough stretch. You're going to have to go out there, and you're going to have to earn your spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And considering where the Penguins are at right now, they cannot afford to come out of this break on a down note. As far as expectations, I'll give mine, you give yours. We go to way. You gotta play hard without Jari. You know, I understand that if he's not back, however long he's not back, it's hard to win games with Casey DeSmith, coin flip Casey showing up sometimes as a league minimum goaltender, sometimes showing up as what he is, which is a backup goaltender that can win you a game or steal you a game once in a while. But if you lose just because it's DeSmith in net, it is what it is. Like, I can't fault the entire team for losing because Casey DeSmith is dealing with a workload that he's not accustomed to. But you can't lose because of the guys who are supposed to be there. You can't lose because of that bottom 6. Carter, Kapanen, McGinn, Bluger. That can't be the reason you're losing games. The defense cannot do what it did against San Jose, giving up 4 opportunities right in the blue paint.
Yeah.
Do that. If you lose because of that, you're trending downward, and I will blame you. But if you lose because Casey DeSmith can't hold down the fort because, again, he's not accustomed to this workload, I'm not going to get on the team as much and be as down on the team because you do know that Tristan Jarry will be back eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Casey DeSmith has to show up a little more, I think. Yeah, that's coming out of this reset. I expect more from everyone, really. Bottom 6 specifically. Casey DeSmith has more to show. He seems to be looking to build on some momentum as, again, temporary starter. Top 6 is fine, but you still want to see a little bit more from them because that's just what you expect, right?
Mm-hmm.
You expect everyone to kind of bring their A game down the stretch, especially in a team who is fighting tooth and nail for that playoff spot. There's a lot of games coming up, a lot of opportunity to reach year 17, which is far more important this year than any other, it feels, because it's closer to ending than almost ever before. You just expect turnarounds from players. Hopefully you expect there to be a little push in the bottom 6 with this time off. You do expect there to be, because the Penguins are historically a good team down the run somehow. I mean, we've had discussions over the years of, man, they had a damn near perfect March. They had a pretty good February. You're going to need that. You're going to need that again. You're going to need that trend to continue, at least. The trend of a very good March leading into probably a mediocre April, even though it's 4 games. They still usually suck in April somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're going to need that good ramp up in February and then all cylinders in March to solidify that you can do this in this league still, that you can become a playoff team. And if we skate in on the wild cards, so be it. I mean,
you just make it to the dance.
Yeah, at this point right now, the expectations are not super high. This team can make the playoffs. You get a healthy Jari, you're at least going to be in the dance. Don't know where in the dance, but you're at least going to be there because, a good top 6 and a solid goaltender and just a couple of tweaks on defense. The defense doesn't need that many changes, just needs a couple of tweaks. That's a playoff team. That's a playoff team. It doesn't go far, but it gets you there. And anything is possible once you get there, right?
Yeah.
So, we get. If I'm not going to say I expect a healthy Tristan Jarry, but damn it, I expect a healthy Tristan Jarry, and then from there, it's a matter of maintaining consistency. Like Ron Hextall said yesterday, this team is inconsistent. These goalies are inconsistent. Like Mike Sullivan said before the break, there's a lot of volatility in this lineup. It's a matter of straightening all that out, ironing out the kinks, and flying forward into February, March, and April. And then hopefully you have a little more hockey to play.
Hopefully. I'm not ready for baseball season. I mean, I'm ready for baseball season this year, but I'm not ready for baseball season by itself. That's where I'm at. By itself. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm not ready for summer, really.
Yeah, summer hockey style. I am very much ready to not be sitting in 17-degree weather right now. But I'll leave everybody with this. 10 years ago, 2013, the Pittsburgh Penguins went near perfect. If I'm remembering correctly, off the top of my head, they did go perfect in the month of March. Everybody loves the March of the Penguins. A decade ago, they did a phenomenal job marching through that month in the shortened season, which led to a run to the Eastern Conference Finals. What was a big part of that year? The general manager looked at the team and said, we need help. Brendan Morrow, Jerome McGinley. Let's run it back like that. Get the team some help, Ronnie. We talked about Ron Hextall a lot. Get the team some help. Go on a run in March and let all the national outlets, TNT, ESPN, AT&T Sportsnet in Pittsburgh, shout out Steve Mears, friend of the show, run with the March of the Penguins narrative. What we all want to see. It's what we all want to see. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Good to have Penguins hockey back this week. Defending Stanley Cup champions in town. Make sure to get some tickets. I want to see PPG Paints Arena packed out tomorrow. I know we won't. But love to see it because it's McKinnon versus Crosby. And you don't know how many times you're going to get to see that because, in my opinion, the NHL calendar needs to switch. But that's a different conversation for a different day. We will have it at some point, but not right now. See you guys next time. Have a great day, Pens fans.